Hi, good morning, everyone. So, joining us today is Dr. Richard Lipscombe, the Managing Director and co-founder of Proteomics International with ASX ticker code PIQ, Papa India, Quebec. With over 25 years of experience in the field, Richard is an expert in using advanced proteomics and mass spectrometry to better understand diseases and develop diagnostics. Thanks for being with us again today, Richard. How are you?
Very well, Gia. Nice to be with you again.
Tremendous. Well, look, I have some questions for you, so let's dive straight in.
Great.
First and foremost, for those who are actually new to your story, what does Proteomics International actually do, and what are the big problems you're solving with your ProMarker platform?
We develop new diagnostic tests. That's our focus. That's where our skills are. And we're
Hmm.
focused on developing tests for areas of unmet clinical need so that we can improve outcomes for patients and save money for healthcare systems, save money for patients, give them better quality of life. So what we're actually focused on are three tests, which are all at the commercialization stage, and we'll come back to those. But each of those tests address large addressable markets. They all have intellectual property behind them and patents in place. They've got significant advantages over standard of care. And for us now, it's a commercialization play. That's what we're really focused on, and that's what we're talking about today, and that's what we're really focused on delivering.
Excellent. That's a tremendous journey since we've spoken 6 months ago. Well, look,
Yeah.
you've got three key tests launching this year: the PromarkerD, the PromarkerEndo, and the PromarkerESO. So, what does each one target, and why are they so important for patients and doctors?
Yes, each of these tests is novel. They're all underpinned by our technology platform. I would like to emphasize that our technology platform, which we call Promarker, lets us develop these novel diagnostic tests. So it's all coming from our scientists and our scientific team that are all developed in Australia, and that lets us bring these tests forward. So the three we have is PromarkerD, which is a predictive test for diabetic kidney disease. This affects patients who have type 2 diabetes, also type 1.
Mm.
And if you have diabetes, then 1 in 2 will develop chronic kidney disease. That's
Okay.
currently. Now,
Mhm.
we want to stop that, and our tests can predict the onset of kidney disease up to 4 years in advance. So if we do that, then we can intervene early and we can stop patients going on a path which would lead otherwise to dialysis or kidney transplant. So that's a really special way of treating people with a chronic condition in the area of diabetes. The other test that we have, which is very exciting, is in endometriosis. This is a first-in-class test for diagnosing endometriosis, which is a condition when cells from the uterus grow into other organs within the body, causes chronic pain, can cause infertility, affects roughly 1 in 9 women and girls around the world. And we have a blood test that can diagnose this disease, which is a really significant improvement because the current therapy, the current treatment, is only done after invasive surgery, which is called a laparoscopy, where an incision is made through the abdomen, and then the surgeon will take a biopsy to see if they can diagnose endometriosis. So that's a very difficult test to diagnose currently. It's a very difficult condition to diagnose currently, and we have a really straightforward alternative. The third test, which is equally important but for a very different group of people, is called PromarkerESO for esophageal cancer. Esophageal cancer, think acid reflux. If you have chronic acid reflux over time, that can lead to esophageal adenocarcinoma, which is its full name. And that's a nasty cancer. If you get that late, your 5-year survival rate is less than 20%. So we again have a blood test for this that can diagnose early. The alternative is an endoscopy this time, a pipe stuck down the throat, and again, a biopsy is taken. Again, not a very pleasant procedure. Again, we have a straightforward approach, a much more easy to use technology, non-invasive blood test that can diagnose this disease. So each of those three tests, each of blood tests, and each have been published and shown to do what to have the accuracy that we're talking about, and each of those could change the world for those patients that are affected.
Excellent. So all three tests, like you said, have extremely large total addressable markets. 1 in 9 for PromarkerEndo, PromarkerD. How many people, what do you think is the addressable market for PromarkerD?
Roughly 10% of the world's population have diabetes. So in the US, that's 32 million people. In
Yep.
Australia, 1.5 million people with diabetes. So all of those patients are individuals that would benefit from taking our test today. So everybody who's developing diabetes in the early stages, that's where our test really comes in. We can take a blood sample and work out whether they're stable or whether they're on a path towards dialysis. So that's a significant audience worldwide, over 500 million people with diabetes.
And most importantly, I'm assuming you said here is 1 in 4 of those with kidney diseases tend to move on to to having chronic diseases long term. So this stops it early in the track.
It's actually 1 in 2. So one
Wow.
in two people with diabetes currently end up with kidney disease. So it's a really significant issue for that group.
Mm.
And if you can find out early, then you can stop people going on that trajectory. So it can change the life for those patients.
Thank you for that, Richard. Look, the company originally looked to partner with Sonic Healthcare, but now you've actually gone direct with your own commercialization strategy. I'm very curious. Can you explain that shift and why you believe this approach really gives your company more control and go into a bit about the upside?
Yes, the shift is a really important one for us. What we're doing
Mhm.
now is we're going direct to the consumer. So that consumer will be the general practitioners or primary care physicians in the US and the patients themselves. And by doing this, the strategic rationale is it gives us the maximum optionality for future strategic partnering. So we're focused on the market awareness of our tests and getting them live.
Yeah.
By demonstrating that there's adoption and that there's sales, that makes future conversations around licensing with strategic partners much more productive, and it really shows the viability of the tests. So what we've been doing now is creating a digital platform so that we can launch our tests in our own facilities. In parallel with those digital platforms, we've been creating the appropriate regulatory frameworks and certification so that we can provide those tests. And that's been done. So we've now developed a process for PromarkerD so that we can roll that test out in Australia. That's a very valuable platform because it allows us to replicate that for our other tests, for
Yep.
both PromarkerEndo and PromarkerESO, and it can be duplicated into the US. So it provides the fastest path for
Mm.
us to actually bring our tests to market now. And then we have this extremely valuable resource for what we can do next. So in terms of securing future licensing agreements, we've got this platform that's built, potentially very attractive for licensing partners. And then we have the option of keeping running that ourselves, letting a partner use that platform, or doing a bit of both, where we continue to run it ourselves and our partner would run on their own platform. So maximum optionality for bringing our tests through, and we see that as really important.
And was that a tough decision for yourself and the board to make that decision to actually go this alone?
No, it wasn't. Ultimately, it was a no-brainer. What we have and what we know we've had for a long time are some really important tests for patients and clinicians. We know that clinicians want to use the tests, and we've had that from specialist surveys. So we know there's demand.
Mm.
What we found as a challenge is with new products and sophisticated tests in this market,
Hmm.
some of the mainstream organizations don't necessarily have the same level of capability that we do to bring these tests through. So what we've been able to do is change our focus slightly and take what was originally a research and development laboratory, and then with very small amount of tweaks, but applying the skills that we have, move into that clinical area. So in the space of 6 months, we took the decision to establish a lab in the US. We found an appropriate site. We put the relevant people in place. We've established that lab, and we have full certification in the US for running our PromarkerD test to what are known as clear standards. And this is also known as the laboratory developed test path. And this is the way that most tests are run in a market like the US. So that was a really efficient exercise. And that test, we've been saying PromarkerD will go live in the first half of this year. So that's getting really close. In parallel, we've increased the accreditations for our laboratories in Australia, and we're in the final processes of that. And that's allowed us to offer PromarkerD as a clinical test in Australia. So that's a long answer to a simple question, but the reality is what we've implemented is a process that we're good at, which is running tests.
Yep.
And we've then built the framework around that for doing the marketing. We've employed the relevant people and used a series of experts to in-source or in-license the different types of packages that we need to be able to provide these tests ourselves. And the last thing I would say on that is digital health, telehealth is the future. We all saw what happened through the pandemic and just the desire to move in that direction. You can order everything online now, and our tests are now part of that process.
And the speed at which we can get to the market as well. Thank you for that, Richard,
Absolutely.
response. Look, you touched on it briefly. I want to go deeper into this. So you've now got a clear certified lab in the US and the first test live in Australia. Are we seeing revenue coming through yet? And what should investors actually expect in terms of, next for traction?
Yeah, so PromarkerD, initially we've launched it in Western Australia. That's really been a pilot launch for us to iron out the bugs
Yep.
and make sure that all the processes work well. And it's worth stepping into that a little bit to indicate where it's at and how we see the revenue developing.
Mm-hmm.
So for a patient who's interested, they can click on an online portal, find out about the tests, and then go through a telehealth consult and get the test. Or they can go and see their GP and request a test. Either way, those tests come through to us. So that's been live for a few weeks in Western Australia, and we're starting to see first sales from that, which is great. Again, the primary objective was about ensuring that the process worked smoothly and efficiently, and that's been a really good exercise. We will now take it live across Australia, and that's where we can really start talking about revenues. And again, that's imminent for having PromarkerD live across the whole country, as well as taking all of our learnings and moving that into the US as well.
So revenue is really not that far away. And in fact, you've already said you've already conducted your first sales.
Yes, we have. And the PromarkerD test is we've been selling through one of our beta test sites in Central America for a while. So the test is starting to generate revenue. It's not going to be substantial in these early days, and it's very hard to give forecasts for that. We said diabetes 32 million, the target audience for endometriosis 70 odd million, same for the esophageal cancer test. So somewhere between 0 and very big numbers is where we want to land. How quickly we get there, well, that's the challenge for us, but it's an exciting stage to start to see revenue develop.
And could you please just talk a little bit more about, I guess, if possible, the retail value per test?
Yes. So in terms of the actual structure that we have, the PromarkerD test, that has pricing in place in the US already.
Yes.
That test is $391.
US dollars?
US dollars. And that code exists from our former partner, and we've applied for our own code. And so we can use that code in the interim. So that's the starting price in the US is $391. And as we've been saying, the target audience in the US is 32 million people with diabetes that we'll be focusing on for using our test. The Australian market is different. Obviously, less used to self-pay and out-of-pocket expenses. The test in Australia is $245, and that will be a cash pay model.
Okay.
For the other tests that we have, both PromarkerEndo and PromarkerESO, they are premium tests. They will have premium pricing. So we're anticipating a price for PromarkerESO of $940 Australian, and be a similar price in the US, but in US dollars, so around $1,000 US. And PromarkerEndo, again, around $1,000 in Australia, potentially up to $1,500 in the US. So 1,000 Australian dollars and 1,500 US dollars in the respective markets. And that reflects the structure of pricing in the different jurisdictions.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Look, I know it's been a tough year for shareholders. The share price is down and sentiment has taken a bit of a hit. What do you want to say to the members who are actually holding this stock at the moment?
Yes. Obviously, we all like to see the share price go up. None of us are happy when the share price goes down. We recognize that a couple of extenuating circumstances for us in terms of the market I think all of the junior biotechs were hit, and that's expected. It's something that we can't control. What we can control is our own destiny. So in terms of the structure of the company
Mm-hmm.
and our operational capacity, where we sit today compared to where we sat 1 year ago is an order of magnitude better. So from a company perspective, we are really pleased with where we sit, and we're in a much better position than we were a year ago. Now, the share price doesn't reflect that, and that's obviously disappointing, and we need to achieve some of the targets that we've set ourselves and have been meeting over the last few months, and will continue to meet in the coming quarters to justify our confidence that the share price will recover. The other important thing that has taken place in the last month is that placement, and obviously we have the share purchase plan live as part of our fundraising. And those funds, that $5.5 million that we are targeting, and the $4.5 million that we've already raised, that shores up our bank balance and takes away a lot of the pressure that was driving down the share price through January, February, when we were seen as come raise. And that's always a tough space to be in. We run a very tight ship. The burn is small for us. The quarterly burn is sat around the $1.5 million figure. We will increase that slightly with the marketing side we're raising this money to do, but in terms of cash in the bank, R&D tax coming through, we have a good 12 months plus runway now without any revenue from our tests to deliver what we want to achieve and what we said we're going to achieve. And obviously, we are very confident that we'll see revenue coming through in the near and medium term. So that puts us in a great position for the share price to recover, and there'll be lots of milestones along the way that shareholders can look forward to us talking about.
Thank you, Richard, for your reassurance. Look, you've just launched a capital raise, which you just discussed, which our members can take part in. Can you explain how the funds will be used and why you believe now is actually a good time to invest, or even average down? I mean, cap raise details, like, perhaps why they should take part and average down.
Yes, obviously, we've all taken a hit with our investment. All of the board shareholders to a different extent, and many of the company senior staff as shareholders, as much as possible, we're all participating. So yes, this is a chance to average down. We do believe that the stock price has been oversold, and this is a chance to back ourselves and to take additional stock. The reason that we're doing the placement now is because of this pivotal stage in the company's development. As we said at the beginning, it's now a commercialization play. The funds that we're raising will be used in two primary areas, which is the development of capacity within our laboratories to ensure that we can meet what we see as the demand, and then the marketing of the tests. And then that splits further between the US and Australia. So we use Australia as our test market to ensure that our tests work properly and we can build the digital platforms. We then mirror that into the US and mirror both the platform and the digital path in the US. So the funds that we're raising will essentially go on those two areas. And if we are able to receive additional funds through the share placement, the board will look at that, because we do see an opportunity to run a little bit faster with additional funds in the bank.
So just to give some of our members some more, I guess, information is, what has been the journey like from inception to completion for the Promarker test to actually now hit commercialization? Like, how many years to get to this point for you?
Yes, the PromarkerD test has been in development for over a decade. It reflects how much work is required to get these tests through and the technology platforms that we've used. So from the initial invention through to the test going live in Australia, more than 10 years. And the PromarkerEndo and PromarkerESO tests, they've come through much faster because of the lessons learned and through that process, but also because of the changes in the framework. The regulatory framework's got more efficient, so we can bring tests through faster. And the technology platforms that we use have actually got more robust. So in the past, a platform that might have been considered research use only and required the test being re-engineered onto a whole new system, which is what we did for PromarkerD. That doesn't have to happen now. So we can run our tests on the platforms that we develop them on, which effectively saves 2 or 3 years in that process. So always a long journey, but we've learned, and the sector's learned, that there's ways of bringing things through faster, and we're doing that. So Endo is probably about a 5-year journey. ESO, we've been developing only in the last 2 or 3 years. But all of those tests we anticipate going live in Australia and the US this year.
Tremendous. What I'm trying to really, I guess, is I think this is the exciting part. It's taken 10 years for us to get to this point, right?
It is, yes. So the shareholders who've come on board, particularly over the last year, that they will have joined on the expectation of things going live in the US, and unfortunately that didn't happen in the time frame that we initially expected. But we know it's going to happen now, and we have the control of that process ourselves. And so, yes, it is that exciting time where things can happen now, and we are in full control. We put the people in place, and we've got the teams, and we've got the expertise to do it, as we've just been saying.
Excellent. And finally, look, what are the big milestones for the next 6 to 12 months that could really change the game for proteomics and potentially turn the market sentiment around? Like 6 to 12 months, I'm very curious.
Yes. We recognize it's all about sales and partnerships.
Okay.
So for us, the milestones over the next 6 to 12 months are focused on getting the tests live in those markets. So first milestone, launching PromarkerD in the US. It's another significant milestone, launching ESO in Australia, launching Endo in Australia, and then taking both of those into the US. And then from there, we can start to see sales. We can start to see the trajectory of that revenue. I think everybody needs to be realistic about how quickly those tests will take off. We don't know, but that's not the objective. That's not the primary objective. The primary objective is having the test live, so that then the conversations with the insurers, in conversations with the reimbursement agencies, the conversations with the specialists and the GPs, they can happen much faster, so that opportunity to partner and license accelerates. And so we know that by having our test live, it's a very different conversation. And so what we should be looking forward to, the shareholders should be looking forward to over the next 6 to 12 months, are exciting conversations in the licensing for those tests, and how we can bring them through on top of actually having the test live and patients using them.
Tremendous. And thank you so much for your time today, Richard. And as normal, what I'll do is I'll get any of our members or our investors, if they have any questions, please forward it to us, info@sharesandvalue.com.au or info@eastcoastresearch.com.au, and we'll forward them through to your team to respond accordingly. Is that okay, Richard?
Absolutely, yes. I'm most happy to receive those questions, and look forward to providing any extra information that we can.
Excellent. It's always a pleasure to hear a wonderful Western Australia story. I'll probably see you in 6 months then, Richard.
Yes, we've certainly got plenty happening, so at least 6 months at the outside, I think.
Excellent. Take care.
Thanks for you.